And welcome to another episode of Your Next Favorite Movie. I am your host, Josh G. And this is a very special episode because this is the day that Halloween Kills releases. So if you go back to, I think it was March, I released that episode when I first talked about the original Halloween. Please welcome the owner of FrightRags, Ben Scrivens, back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So obviously we talked about how when I discovered you, you were a horror t-shirt company, and now you become like a horror merchandise company because you have a little bit of everything going on.
Yeah, we've been dabbling in a lot of different things. I mean, we've been doing that for a while, but even the last just handful of years, we've kind of expanded into different categories where we thought, where we could do things that we wanted to do. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we do all starts from just like sitting around going, oh my God, I wish I had, a Halloween lunchbox or whatever, or something like that. So it's all pretty organic, but yeah, we've got our hands in a lot of different things now.
All right. So at the time Halloween Kills release, what do you have guys coming on the horizon?
So coming up the last half of the month, we've got People Under the Stairs next week, which to my knowledge is the first ever officially licensed collection for this movie.
Oh, wow.
I believe that is true. Because when we asked Universal about getting it, it was this in the Burbs actually, and they were like, yeah, I guess. Like they were, because they'd never licensed it out for merchandise. So
oh, wow.
Cool. And I love People Under the Stairs. That's just a great movie. I remember seeing it in the theater. And it's the anniversary, I believe it's 1990s. It's the 30th anniversary, I believe, this year, or am I thinking 91? But no, I think it's this year. So we've got that coming up on October 19th. We've got more Trick or Treat stuff coming on the 22nd. That's going to be a great release. We've got all new items for that. And then we're celebrating the anniversaries, the 80th and the 90th. So the 80th anniversary of Wolfman and the 90th anniversary of Dracula. We've got two brand new designs coming out for those, in addition to a bunch of socks for the Universal Monsters coming the 27th. So it's going to be a pretty stacked last half of the month. We've got some really killer stuff coming out.
All right. Sounds awesome. I am rocking one of my FrightRags.
I could tell when you first got on. I was like, I know what he's wearing.
Yeah, and I have the Sam version as well of this
Awesome.
shirt. So
thank you.
I'm a big Trick or Treat fan as well. So
me too.
All right, so let's just jump into it. We're gonna be ranking the Halloween films, starting with the bottom, working our way to the top. So Ben, I'm gonna let you kick it off. I have a feeling we're both gonna be on the same page on this last one, but let's see. Maybe you'll surprise me.
Yeah. So, and just so I understand, we are doing every single Halloween movie, regardless of timeline or whatever, yeah. Right?
Okay. Just put it in any order you want.
That was my assumption. But the bottom of the barrel, let's be honest. Let's just rip the Band-Aid off. It's Halloween Resurrection. I mean,
agreed. Let's talk about
it. That movie. Okay, I was excited for this movie in 2002. I saw the previews. It was coming out in July, which is weird, but I was like, whatever. And I remember seeing him come through the door through the video camera, and I thought that was really cool. Like, back then it was very, it was post Blair Witch, but it felt a little found footagey, or felt a little new in terms of technology, and seeing it that way. Right. And seeing Michael that way was kind of cool. And then with Rick Rosenthal coming back, that's pretty cool. And I liked the idea of it. And I remember seeing photos of it online of the house that they built as a set, and I thought that was cool. But that movie's a hot mess. Like, if I cut that movie, it has to be the first, 5 or 6 minutes leading up to the credits, the opening credits, and maybe the last 5 minutes. But honestly, it's pretty much garbage. What do you think?
I agree. In fact, I was telling someone recently, it's like I used to like, it's actually more like 15 minutes that she's there. It just doesn't.
You're right. It is about the first.
It is about the first 15 minutes, but I've gotten to the point where I don't even like that. Like, I can't stand where they go to the roof and he hangs upside down. He starts mocking the ambulance guy from H2O. I'm like, Michael, I mean, I realize he can be a jokester in a way, the way he pranks people, sort of, but not like that.
No, it felt off. I mean, he looks like a Jim Henson creation when he's chasing her down the hallway. Like, the hair, he looks like almost
yeah.
a speaker or something, you know. And no, you know, no disrespect, by the way, to like Brad Lorry who played him. I mean, you know, and honestly, you know, no disrespect to the people in the film, but really, it's just not good. And you're right. I just watched the opening sequence because it was just on AMC Fear Fest while recording this, and I thought, you know, it's just, I don't know. It was just, it's not good. I mean, I almost feel bad for Jamie Lee Curtis having to come back to that, because really H2O is a good send off for her and even Michael as that timeline. To carry it on just felt wrong, and the way they did it felt horrible.
Yeah, and the kiss.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh my God.
I mean, there's something about it because, you know, Jamie sells anything she does, right? Like,
yeah.
She can sell it as an actress, as how good at her craft she is. She can sell it, so it doesn't feel as bad as it could have if anybody else had done it, but it's still a little rough,
right?
You know, just the idea of it.
Yep, I agree. All right, so I figured we would agree there.
All right.
Now we're gonna see. So where you got next?
My next goes to Rob Zombie's Halloween 2.
Ooh, okay. Okay, I got that a little bit higher.
So we're gonna talk about that later?
Yeah, we'll talk about that one in a little bit. Of course, we might be doing that for a little bit here because I got Curse of Michael Myers next.
Okay, all right. I want to hear your take on this because I have that higher, so we can always wait. But I think maybe you should talk about it because I'm curious.
Honestly, I think we'll table it for higher because I don't have a lot to say. I just have never even been able to get into it.
Okay.
And I've watched both theatrical and producer's cut.
Right.
So.
All right. So you want me to talk about Halloween 2 then?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, got it. Okay. So here's the thing. I actually do like that film, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. I didn't like it as much when I saw it the first time in theater. There was a lot of questions that I think we all had. There was a lot going on, and I really did not care for it. However, of course I bought the Blu-ray when it came out, and I watched the director's cut with Rob Zombie's commentary, and I had a brand new appreciation for that film. And I actually do enjoy it. It's not a movie that I hate. The reason why it's so far down the list is because there's other reasons I'll get into later for the other films that kind of played a factor into it. But for this one, it's not one that is rewatchable for me. There's scenes in it that I really love. I mean, when Annie gets killed and they show the home video footage of her as a young girl, and John Five's score for that, it brings tears in my eyes, legitimately, like not even kidding. I think Rob does capture something really cool. Again, part of the issue that I tend to have sometimes with his films, not usually, most of them except for the Halloween ones, are that like everyone's so trashy, you know what I mean? And it's just like everyone, even I love Malcolm McDowell, but the way he plays Loomis is such a jerk, and it's like you can't even want to like him sometimes. So
I agree.
That's why I put it low on the list, mainly because it's not one that I'm reaching for a lot.
Yeah, I coming out of the theater, I was like, oh, what has Rob Zombie done? I was not a fan. I enjoy it more now for what it is. Just like you say, like reading up what Rob Zombie says, why he did it, helps your reasoning for it. I also think Rob Zombie doesn't help his case because you get the white horse, and I know a lot of people go to the white horse, and he puts the white horse definition, like what it means in the beginning, and then he comes out and says people are looking too much into the white horse. I'm like, oh, no, hold on now, Rob. Yeah, you make it that way. I mean, it's right. We don't randomly do that. Come on now. But overall, I have come to appreciate it a lot more than I used to. So, all right, let's go to this. Okay. I'll let you say your next one. This one's going to be controversial for me.
So again, similar reasoning here. My next one's Rob Zombie's Halloween. And again, I actually like what he did. And I'm going to say this. I appreciate Rob as an artist and him creating something of his vision and basically saying, I don't care what anybody says. I'm going to do what I want to do. I think that's awesome. So I've never bashed him or his movies because I appreciate the fact that he he is following the beat of his own drummer, and he just doesn't care. And I love that. Again, it goes back to, and I've seen, you know, his Halloween many times. And again, I do enjoy it. Like, I really do like it. Part of the issue I have with it when I think of all the other films is because his are so mean-spirited in a way, and it is very hard for me to like want to just toss it on and watch it, because I feel like I'm watching I don't want to say torture porn, because that's not what I mean. This isn't Saw, this isn't Hostel, but right. I mean, I feel like I need to be in like a mood for it, because it is so grimy and dirty. And nothing wrong with that. It's just, again, when I put it up against, and we'll talk about it later, these other films, it falls lower only because, and again, when I rank them, I kind of rank them not in terms of maybe the best movies as much as they are my favorite, right? So, and that has more, again, we'll talk about it later, more factors into it. So, you know, when I saw Rob Zombie's Halloween, it was awesome because it was the first Halloween since Resurrection, which we needed that palate cleanser. It was 5 years later. But at the same time, like, I don't know. Like, I could see if someone was younger that saw it, was affected by it. Like, I was 30 at the time. So it was like, it was cool to see. And I knew a couple friends that were sort of involved in the film and helping to make certain things. So it was kind of neat to see that. And again, I really do like the movie. It's just like, honestly, out of all the ones on this list, Resurrection is the one I can honestly say I just don't like it. Everything else I like. So it's just putting them in place of how I feel about them when I look at them.
Okay. I have mine a little higher. So I'll table that for a second. Now this one, and we're going to table this talk till probably what I'm guessing is much higher on your list, because this is probably one of my bigger movie hot takes in general. So, and you talked about Rick Rosenthal. I'm not a fan of either of his movies, and I'm putting Halloween 2 this low on the list.
Ooh, that's a hot
that's why I say that's but we'll table that for when I know it's going to be high on your list.
That's
so
cool. Yeah. And yeah, we'll get to that.
Okay.
Okay, the next one on my list is H2O. That might be
we're gonna table that talk too.
Okay.
We're gonna table that talk.
Okay. Can I ask you a quick question, if you don't mind? How old are you?
36. So yes, okay. I was 12 going into H2O.
All right. So
I was about to be 13 when I turned 13 like a month after it came out. It plays a big factor, and
this plays a factor in a lot of my decisions later on when I know. So that's why I wanted to ask, because I'm 44. So that's a basic, 7-year difference. So that does play a factor for.
It does, and we'll talk about that one.
Okay.
All right. So my next one is actually Halloween 5. So I don't know how high you have it. So
I have it. That's a couple more up for me.
Okay. All right. You know what? Let's just keep going. We're going to talk about them as high as we can. That's what we're going to do here.
Okay. So should I tell? Oh, so you want me to go to my next
Actually,
one?
I'll do my next two, because this is where I had Halloween 2 and then Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 and Halloween. Was right here in front of these. So okay. I didn't have them like sky high or anything.
Sure.
They were definitely middle of the pack for me. And like you said, I was about to be 22 when Rob Zombie's Halloween came out. I didn't grow up the biggest Halloween fan. Like, I'm sure Halloween's your favorite franchise. For me, it's Friday the 13th. I grew up a Jason guy.
It's funny you say that. I think, again, going back to loving all of these films and having a deep-rooted love for every single one of them, I might have to say, like, Michael Myers is my favorite, and Halloween, no secret here, is my favorite movie of all time. That's just spoiler alert, but that's just the case. But I almost would say that Friday the 13th is my favorite franchise as a total, because A, I love Jason, and B, I can just put on any of those films and I'm just like, it is like a nice slipper or something like that. You know what I mean? It's like putting on pajamas. Like, it's so comfortable. It's the same thing with Halloween, but in most cases, any Friday the 13th, it just puts me right into a certain thing. And I love that franchise. And I think there's more movies in that franchise that make me feel that way than maybe even Halloween to a degree. But again, there's certain films in the Halloween franchise that I'm like, oh, I love them so much.
Okay. So we talked about, I know I told you about Halloween, Rob Zombie's Halloween last time. I kind of look at that first half. It's more of a backstory for Otis Driftwood from the Firefly clan than it is Michael Myers.
I like that.
Yeah, there's like, I think if you're gonna go backstory, you need to give him like the most wholesome backstory in the world. That way, when it does turn, you're like, holy shit! Not
I agree.
As typical, backwood redneck, so to speak, I guess, that Rob Zombie loves to put in his movies. So that part I have a problem with, but I grew up loving violent movies. So the violence is something I gravitate towards in Rob Zombie. That is part of why I like it. So yeah. All right. Let's go to let's see, where are we at? Number 6, number 7.
So so my next one after H2O is 6, Curse of Michael Myers.
Okay. Talk about why you like it, because I cannot get into this one to save my life.
Okay, so again, I think there's a couple factors at play. One of the things that I always felt was so great about like the internet and meeting people like you or anybody else that grew up watching these, but when we watched them, people weren't talking to each other because there was no internet, and now we reconvene like years later, and obviously for a long time with the internet. But I always felt when I first saw that movie, and again, I had just graduated high school, I was going into college. It came out in the fall. I remember seeing it. I don't remember what month it came out. Was it August or September? But anyway, it came out in the fall. I remember seeing it here, and then I went away to school and walked down to the theater like 3 miles away to see it by myself. And it was in the fall. And that movie, it's not a great movie. It really isn't a great movie in the sense of it's bogged down by plot. I mean, Michael Myers is having he basically had sex with his niece, right? I mean, let's be honest here. I mean, his niece is having his kid. That's gross. And there's so many things about this where we're like, what is happening? This is all pretty dumb, but it feels like Halloween to me. Like it feels like it's Halloween in the town. It feels like seasonal to me. So I don't love it, but I can put it on and again, remember when I was watching it when I was younger, my late teens. And there's a certain amount of nostalgia that I think colors it for me, which again, we'll do a little bit later on the list too for another one, actually the next one, but.
Absolutely. Yeah. For me, I don't have that. I finally saw this in the probably mid 2000s for the first time.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, it was a long time before I ever saw Curse of Michael Myers. And Paul Rudd should be lucky Clueless came out that year too, because he probably wouldn't have the career.
He wasn't going to be basing an acting career off of what he was doing in Curse. Yeah.
Yeah, when I rewatched it, that first scene where he's calling the radio show, I was like, is he trying to do like his own Hannibal Lecter program? I was 8 years old when I first met Michael Myers. I was like, what are you doing here? But other than that, I don't like it. I don't like. We'll get into 4 and 5 because, I had 5 a little bit lower. But, well, not than Curse. I had Curse way down at my number 10. But yeah. All right. I already talked about Rob Zombie's Halloween. So now we'll go to your next one.
My next one's part 5, actually.
Okay.
So part 5 for me, it's more nostalgia than anything because I was 12 when it came out. I had already part 4, part 4 was the first one I saw in the theater at 11 the year before. And I was totally, again, reading Fangoria to try to find out what's coming up next. And there was the whole thing, like you can save Michael Myers' next victim or have him killed. He had a hotline you could call. Like there was so much wrapped up in it. And that year was weird for franchises. I mean, that was right around the time of Jason Takes Manhattan and Nightmare 5, which was weird, and they started going in these different directions. And obviously Halloween followed suit with the Man in Black. And what's this Michael Myers house, which is now this blue like mansion or something. It's like, what is happening in this film? It's so weird, but I love Danielle Harrison. I love her as Jamie. I love Jeffrey Lindman, played Billy. I love Ellie Cornell. I love Wendy Kaplan. I mean, Donald Pleasant's in it. Like, because it reprises, there's so many roles reprised from part 4, it does feel like the continuation. And it's nostalgia. I watched it a lot as a kid, primarily because after like, it was way more slashery, you know what I mean? And it was fun to just pop on while I was doing other stuff. So it's probably way more nostalgia than anything else. And I can see why like you would put it way low or anybody else would put it way low. It's just how I saw it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. For me, Danielle Harris is the reason I have it this high. I think the laundry chute scene is one of the best tension pieces in the franchises.
Right.
So I'll give it that. But yeah, I don't like much else. And I hate that they bring in the Man in Black and stuff. And Michael doesn't even have his mask tucked. Like, I'm like, what the hell? What? You can't even.
And they show him too much in a vulnerable state. Like, don't even get me started about the crying, but like, in the beginning, like he's going down that stream, right, to get away from the bomb blast, and you see him almost out of control, and it's a weird thing to see, unless like, you know, the final girl or whatever is beating him down, and then that's a different thing. But like to see him not have a handle on things, it almost humanizes him too much to me, and there's elements of that just feel weird to me. I don't know, it's just not. Yeah, again, I think as you start to explain things more or show more, the more you show, the less scary it is and less intense it can be, you know?
Yeah, I agree. All right, it's my next one. This is where we get to the one that derailed the franchise for a while, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch.
Wow, it's that low.
It's number 5. That's where I'm at, number 5. Yeah, I used to have it higher, but I've come around on a couple since then. So okay. I know you have it higher, so we'll talk about it in a minute.
Okay. You want me to go to my next one?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. It's 2018. Ooh. Now, I love this film. So again, we're starting to get into this realm where it's like nostalgia versus whatever. I think, excuse me, I love Halloween 2018. I love the idea of how it's leading into Halloween Kills, and then this whole idea of a trilogy with Halloween Ends. I could go on and on about the fact that, you know, Jamie Lee Curtis and David Gordon Green and Danny McBride and like what they've crafted, almost like the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight trilogy, right? And then you've got John Carpenter and Nick Castle, and like everything that they're doing with these movies to me is just so awesome. And it is really cool to see. And I loved 2018. The one thing I did not like so much about 2018, I got the script early on because we had the license to do shirts, and they gave us the script and a lot of images early on, which was very cool. And of course I read the script right away. And the final movie is slightly different. The ending's different, but they actually ended it better in the movie. They reshot it in way better ending and final fight scene, all that. In the script, I did not like Dr. Sartain. In the movie, he worked better, I think, because they added a couple things. The one thing that kills me though is the fact that this guy is this kind of older gentleman, not really in shape, and he's got a busted arm, and he takes the 6 foot whatever James Jude Courtney has got, you know, and drags him and gets him in the back of a cop car. There's no way in hell I couldn't do it, and I'm not like buff or anything, but there's no way. You need 3 guys to do that.
You know, I agree. That's a big man. I agree. That's definitely.
I would almost buy the fact that he could drag him that far, but to lift his entire torso up and get him sitting up in a car as dead weight, And to me, I understand why they had to do it. I get it. I understand the device they were using to get those two together. And I think what we're going to see is, it plays out much better in Halloween Kills, the way everything leads in. But I just, that part was a little hard to swallow. But I'll tell you, 2018 is one of the sequels, weirdly enough, especially considering all the movies that are older than that I've seen so many times since it came out. It's so rewatchable for me. And I think that's a good sign, as a fan, that I want to watch it more.
I agree. So I'm on my number 4. Is that where you're at?
Yeah, sure. So I'm in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Yeah, that was my 4th one. Yeah.
Okay, so my number 4, and we're just going to table this because you're going to, don't shut the computer off on me. This is where I put the original Halloween at. Like I said, It was hot. I didn't want it to be burned.
No, it's all good. I'm actually, I like that. I like that you're doing that. I can't wait to talk about it more. That's awesome, actually.
All right, so go on to your number 3 then.
So, well, actually, it's my number. This is actually my number 4. Sorry.
Okay.
I got 4 left. So, Halloween 3.
Okay.
Again, I will, as a kid, I did not like the movie because it didn't have Michael Myers in it. I remember I think I was 20 years old. And I was working over the summer before I went back to college, and I was like, I had bad allergies. I used to get really bad allergies before I started taking allergy shots. So I was staying home from work because I was like so clogged up. And my mom came in the morning. She's like, "Oh, I bought you this. I found this at the checkout." And it was Halloween 3 VHS. And it was like, I don't know, bargain bin or something. And I hadn't seen it in a while. Like, it had been a years because I was like, screw that movie. It's not, whatever. And this was in the late 90s. And I popped it in and I was like, oh my God, this movie's really good. And I really started falling in love with, it's the music, it's the atmosphere, it's Tom Atkins, I mean, that guy's just, he can do no wrong in my book. So, and I just love them. It's almost like, in a weird way, like Friday the 13th Part 5. It's the one I watched the least as a kid, so it almost still seems new. Even though at this point I've seen it so many times, it's definitely not new anymore at all. But I was just watching it today. I love that movie. Like, to me, it's just perfect beginning, middle, and end. And it sucks that it got such a bad rap. It did, but I think these days, like, it doesn't matter. Most people really dig it. So it's not even a weird thing to say you like Halloween 3 anymore because it's so now accepted, which is great,
I agree. And just imagine if this had come as Halloween 2, and then we could have just got anthology.
Exactly.
If you didn't have 2 right there, which actually that's how I first saw it, is my mom, back when DVDs first came out, Sam's Club used to have these 2-packs, and it had Halloween 2 and 3. Yep. And I hadn't seen them. So I watched Halloween 2, and then I watched 3, and I'm like, what is this? How does this even function as a Halloween movie? But yeah, it's one I've definitely come around on. And obviously you got to love Tom Atkins and anything.
Oh, yeah.
So he sells it. All right, let's go on to your number 3 now that we're back on track.
So my number 2 and 3 pick always kind of flip-flopped. But I think in the last couple of years, I feel pretty comfortable with this. So Part 2 is my number 3.
This was way back at my number 9. So yeah. Talk about your love for it. Let's go with your love for it.
Again, going back to my age and growing up, I saw Halloween, the first movie, when I was real little. I was 4, right? So that was 1981. Halloween 4, when Michael comes back after Part 2, it comes out in 88, right? So there's a good handful of years, pretty much almost all of the 80s, that do not feature Michael Myers except for 2 movies, 1 and 2. So as a kid, I had Friday the 13th out the wazoo, but I had 2 Halloween movies because I wasn't counting the third one at the time. And it was 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2. So one of the reasons why I love Part 2 is it's the same crew for the most part. Obviously everyone's reprising their roles. So it feels very much like the night is continuing to me. I think they did an amazing job capturing that 3 years later, even though, it still looks and feels more modern than the original, but I think they did as best a job as they could do to continue the night. The other thing I like about Part 2 is that it has the same loneliness that Part 1 does. It's a very isolated film. That hospital clearly has like 3 patients in that whole place.
Yeah.
There's like, and 4 staff. Like, but I love that. I love that isolated or that lonely feeling that Part 1 has, because it's a very small film. The one thing that I've always, and I will die on this hill, that I hate about Part 2, which I understand why they did it, is that they made them Laurie and Michael brother and sister. I did not ever, as a kid, I was always trying to piece together, how was that possible? That was not in the first movie. Now, when I saw the first movie, it was the TV cut, so they did show some of that stuff. However, I would go back and rent it, and that stuff was gone. So that stuff was just a weird memory of mine until the TV cut was re-released years and years later. So to me, I was like, these things don't fit together. Like I feel like it's a wrong thing. And of course you learn later on, John Carpenter was just like, I got to write something. I got a six pack and I'm just going to make them brother and sister. And it leads into the other films that I love, but it's still, I don't like it. That's why I like 2018 when they're like, no, we're going after part one, not after part two.
Nope, I agree. I do not like the sister part of it. I don't know. I don't know that they did. I don't feel they did as good a job as you do continuing the same night. I don't like that. I don't think Jamie Lee Curtis at this point, she's trying to get away from it. And
she's got a wig too.
She's got a terrible wig because she's cut her hair for Trading Places or whatever, I think it was.
Yep.
She's sitting there going in and out of a almost like comatose state in the hospital. Like she'll just randomly wake up and then boom, be right back out. I'm like, I don't like it. Like you say, I agree. The hospital gives you that lonely feeling, but I've been in so many hospitals. Every time I see a hospital horror movie, I'm like, bullshit. I've been in those. They're not like that.
Right.
So, oh yeah, I actually had this one spot lower a long time ago, and I raised it up at least a little bit because there are some cool things about it, but I can't do it. It's not one I like to go back. It's weird considering where I'm going with my ranking that I can't stand the sister angle, but
Yeah.
All right. So, well, my number 3 is, I'm guessing, going to be your number 2, and that's Halloween 4. So we're pretty close. Yes. So this is one I didn't always like, but I've really come around on. Obviously, I had it just slightly above the original Halloween. And like I said about Halloween 5, I love Danielle Harris in this role. I would love to see that. I know not doing the timeline, I get why they can't bring her back, but man, I'd love to see her get to reprise this role in some form. But obviously, you can't do that with what they're doing. So I get it.
Well, think about it. The next film, Halloween Ends, will complete this timeline. What's to say in 5 years they don't decide to go a direct sequel for part 4?
No, that's true.
I mean, it certainly could be possible. I mean, anything's possible at this point, That's
true. All right. So I know you have more with Halloween 4 than me because I didn't see it till late.
Yeah, like Halloween 4 is this, it came at a time, again, 1988. I was 11 years old. It was in like this heyday for me of my horror movie as a kid, like renting them all the time, just watching them and reading Fangoria. And I had a couple friends that were into it because of usually because I was like, let's go watch this, And again, the anticipation of grabbing the Fangoria every month and looking in the back. If it wasn't on the cover already, I'd look at the back and see what's coming up next, and just to find out if there's anything related to Halloween. And as soon as I found out they're making a part 4, I never forget my sister, who was 5 years older than me. She was babysitting family friends of ours, and I was with her. And this was probably in like September of that year. And I remember being like on like up in like the living room, and downstairs they had this like kind of family room area, and I heard the TV, and all I heard was 10 years ago he changed the face of Halloween, and I like sprinted. And that was the first time I saw the trailer, and I'm getting goosebumps now thinking of it. And then my brother, who's 10 years older than me, he and his girlfriend at the time, I think wife, took me on October 30th, 1988, which was cool because the opening sequence with Danielle Harris says October 30th, 1988. And I was like, that's right now, like to see Michael back and the other thing is, and I'm getting into nostalgia here, that movie is a stellar film. And I think it does a great job capturing the feel of the first, but in the modern era of the time, 10 years later, the different kind of style of filmmaking, even the story, that is my absolute favorite sequel of this franchise, I think. And again, there's nostalgia, but I think it's just a really well written, well shot, everything. And that, I think Alan McElroy, who wrote it, they were under the gun because of the writer's strike. And I think there were some issues that you turn that around either pretty quickly or it affected some things. But and Danielle Harris is great. Like the music, hearing the Halloween theme as a piano again, it's just, even the poster, seeing that poster is like, it's burned into my brain, seeing the big Michael Myers face and then the house, wanting to see it on the big screen, wanted to be him kind of, for Halloween and things. Like, it was almost like watching a superhero, and in some weird ways. And then the way they ended it, I thought was brilliant. I was walking out of the theater like, oh my God, this is crazy. So I just think it's an awesome movie.
Now that gives me two questions to ask you. One, when you talked about the poster, when you saw the mask in the movie, were you disappointed? It's not the poster. I mean, let's be honest.
I will say to a degree I was, but I wasn't, only because of two things. I actually thought it did look pretty cool, for the most part, except for the one scene in the schoolhouse where they used, because they did shoot it with a Captain Kirk mask. They didn't. They shot a bunch of scenes with the Captain Kirk with non brown hair. They didn't spray paint the hair, but then they realized it didn't work, and then they had to reshoot a few of those scenes, except for the one in the schoolhouse. That's why it's still in there. The one thing I will say about that mask is at least it's consistent through the film versus something like H2O or these other where they keep changing it. Hey, listen, it compared to the original and in the poster, it's not a good mask. But what I thought is it almost looked like it did in the film where he grabs it off the rack. And at the time, Don Post was selling The Mask, which was their version of Michael Myers, which looked a lot like Part 4. So the idea of him going into a convenience store or something and grabbing it off the rack, and then I went into my local seasonal pop-up, and I'd see the masks and I'd see that white mask up on the top there, and I'd be like, it's just like the movie, because that looks very similar. So no, it's not a great mask, but I love it for the other reasons.
All right, so you say you walked out like that was awesome. Were you upset any at the ending? Like, did it?
No, it's hard to remember. I don't think I was upset. I remember just being very surprised because, again, I was 11, so I'm thinking that's Michael behind the mask. He's killing. And then when, Loomis is like, no, and then you see Jamie, and then it cut. I'm like, oh, that is rad. And then I knew, soon after, whatever it was, several months after, you find out they're making a part 5. It's like my mind is spinning as to what can happen. And then the way they kind of do it, you're sort of like, oh, okay, they kind of back on it.
Well, okay, let me go back a little bit further than that. When they shoot him, were you upset at that? Like you felt like he was done?
Oh,
I have a friend who said that he literally turned to his dad crying in the theater because he was a huge Halloween fan. And that's what he said. So I just want to know, because obviously I didn't see this in theater, so I didn't.
I guess I was. I don't know if I was sad. I think I was very. I don't know. I remember. I guess in my mind, I always thought he would come back or something, but I don't know. I guess I don't know. I just don't remember being necessarily sad, except for just being like, "Wow, like this movie was really good."
Okay. So my number 2 was 2018. We talked about it. I like it a lot. I enjoyed it. I went, day one to it. It is one that I've revisited quite a few times, which is something I took into account when making this list. Because if I can just put it on and sit back and enjoy it, I agree. The doctor stuff is a fallacy that can't be. You got to just look around it, I guess. And at least he pays for what he does, so at least there's that.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, at the very least, they stop that. That like he serves its purpose, but then he's done. You know what I mean?
He's done. Yeah. All right. So I'll go with my number 1 so that we know what we can talk about for your number 1 at the end. You heard it was way back when H2O. You had it down low. I was, like I said, 12 going on 13. I don't think I had ever watched a full Halloween movie going into this. Like I had seen Michael Myers. I knew who Michael Myers was. I was a Freddy and Jason fan. But Halloween at that time to me was just kind of boring and slow. So this was the first one I went into. And that's why I absolutely love it. I know it's the Scream era. I think it has, forget Resurrection, it has the most satisfying ending. It walking out of that theater, like the whole theater erupted when she decapitates him. Mm-hmm. I mean, like I was talking about my friend who was upset he saw Michael die. I wasn't a big Michael fan, so I wasn't upset going, how can they bring him back? I was like, oh, this dude's done. You can't come back from a decapitation.
Right.
So I absolutely walked out of there loving it. Yes, I agree. You want to hear me gush more about this? Check out my friends on the Film Effect podcast. We talked about Halloween H2O for about 3.5 hours because I wanted to come join them and do that. And yeah, you can go check that out to hear even more. But yeah, I love it.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yes, you talked about the mask. They use like 4 different masks, including this horrible digital one that they didn't even need to put the camera on. They didn't even need, they could have just cut that shot out. You didn't need it. It wasn't a necessary shot in the movie. But and I love the 85-minute runtime. I know a lot of people hate that it's too short, but I actually like it because it gets me in and out, and that's a big selling point for me now.
No, I agree. Here's the thing. I do love that movie, and what I love about it is this was literally I'm trying to think in my head, like I think this is pretty much the first film of these franchises to take such a different sort of direction and wipe the slate clean from before. New Nightmare is probably different, but and I think that was a little bit earlier. I think it was 94, right?
Right. Yep.
So I would give that total credit, even though it's a different type of thing. I love that they were just like, you know what, we can't keep doing this. Let's just do a direct sequel to part 2. Jamie Lee Curtis is back, which was huge. I loved especially because it was early internet days. I loved all the pomp and circumstance around, like the behind the scenes stuff that they showed on network TV, and like Entertainment Tonight is covering it, and Jamie Lee Curtis is back, and this passing the torch from Janet Leigh to her, and there's so much to love about this film, and I do love it, and I appreciate it, and I loved Kevin Williamson. I love Scream. I love Dawson's Creek. I love the stuff that he did. I think for me though, and I saw it, I think twice or 3 times in the theater, it didn't, and again, but I was 22, right? So I didn't have the nostalgia factor built in. So for me, when I rewatch that now, it doesn't age well for me because you got the Creed. I even think Scream ages better than this because it's got that Kevin Williamson thing, which I love. And again, Scream ages great. I think this one for me feels very of its time. And the other thing I never really connected with it is because it's not in Haddonfield. But I will tell you, when she shows up and she kicks that thing and grabs the axe and just yells, "Michael," I'm getting goosebumps now. That's amazing. When she does the thing where it's like, go down the street to the Becker's house, referencing Scream. When she lops his head off at the end, do as I say, all the words that she, all these things. It's so cool to see her back in action. It was hard to see her be so cold, which is funny because she's sort of like that in 2018, but like she's definitely very like strict and cold in this one. It's weird to see, but I do love it, and I can see why you have that as your number one. Like,
yeah, it's a recent decision. I'm not gonna lie, it's a recent thing that after these last couple rewatches, getting ready for that other show. And I will say the Haddonfield thing, and I brought that up to them to see how they felt. And they didn't mind it because I knew a lot of people had a problem with it leaving Haddonfield. But I know someone who's been through an extreme tragedy, to say like what she's been to, and they literally moved as far as they could without leaving the States. Like I live in the Southeast and they moved to the Pacific Northwest to get as far as way as you possibly could without actually leaving the country.
Right.
So I just she's dealing with her problems, obviously. I mean, hell, the alcoholism going on in that movie. So like you said, she's cold to pretty much everyone. She's dealing with it, and she's not dealing with it well. So
yeah, and I get that, and I do also appreciate that take on how she's handling her trauma. Right. So and I mean, I know she at the time was dealing with addiction and things like that in her real life. So I mean, I'm sure a lot of that played into it, or potentially at least. But I do appreciate that take on it. It's just, again, when I'm thinking about all these films and what I would want to put on and watch and what I feel really like comfortable just kind of throwing on like my pajamas or something, like H2O just isn't one that I reach for more often than some of the others,
I completely understand. And now your favorite, most people's favorite, I'm the oddball here, and I understand that, the original Halloween. There's nothing I could say to sell this movie. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, for me, it's a little slow. Like if I had grown up with it, it'd be different. But growing up with the Jasons and not getting to Halloween till later, it just moves a little bit slow. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's good. The atmosphere is good. The tension still works. But I grew up with a faster killer, and I needed a faster killer.
When did you see Halloween the first time?
Man, it was after, like, if I saw it before I saw H2O, I don't remember it. I really don't. So it would have been late 90s. Early
Yeah, I
aughts.
mean, that's the thing. You come to these movies in different times and places, and it's hard to capture certain things. Like my son is 12 now, so he's the age you were when you saw H2O, you know, and he's been into horror for a long time. But I started him out slow, and it's only been the last few years that I've let him watch a lot more, and he's seen a lot more. Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Screams, like he ate everything. And we watched the original Halloween because this was 3 years ago now, so he was like 9. And he loved it. And it's funny, I do think part of it he loves it because he knows it's my favorite movie. And I talk about the people in it and the people that I know in it, and all these other sort of things where I've been there. Like there's a lot of other context at this point now. But he says he loves it, but he genuinely does. I mean, we've watched it a few times together. I don't know if he'll grow up with the same nostalgia feeling. It'll be different, right? It'll be a different thing. He loves the new It, and I think that's the perfect thing for him at this age. You know what I mean? But anyway, I can understand if you came to it in the late 90s after watching all these other films and you're kind of going back, and the same thing, not to keep bringing up my son, but he did the same thing with Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He put it on and I watched it with him, and he's like, this is kind of boring. And I was like, okay, I get where you're coming from.
Right.
Even though in my head, I'm like, boring. It's a masterpiece. But I get it because really not a ton happens in that film. And I think as he gets older, he can probably look back and he can appreciate it. He didn't hate it. He just, he just didn't grab him, which I get. And I can understand that with Halloween. Like when I was a kid, again, I was 4 years old when I saw this film. It was 1981. It was the first time it was ever been on television, which I didn't know at the time. I was just literally plopped down in front of the TV because I was bored and I wanted to leave my parents' friend's house and they wouldn't let me. So they said, go watch TV. So that shapes, boom, no pun intended, the way I feel about that film. As a 4-year-old, I was used to Popeye or Scooby-Doo or, and seeing, I'd never seen a dramatic type of, maybe the Incredible Hulk at the time, the movie, the show, I don't think I've ever really seen anything so visceral, even though I understand it's a slow film, but like this guy is busting through this closet and he's putting somebody up with a knife. And I'm just like, what's happening? I want more, I want to see it again. I want to see more. Yeah. So it's like, I get why people like me love it, but I also understand if there are people that didn't come to it at the same time or from a different direction and they might not, which is what I like, the fact that my son and other people have come to it later and still can like love and appreciate it, which I know you do, but at the same time, it's funny to see that it still has an impact on people. Yeah,
no, like I said, it is visceral, but for me, having seen all those Jasons and Freddys, and that's essentially a bloodless film, it's
absolutely.
It's just a couple little spots of blood, if that, the guy in the field that Loomis doesn't see, and
yeah.
Like I said, it's essentially a bloodless film. So,
yep.
All right, I think that's it. That makes the list.
Yeah, and that's fun. It's always fun ranking these because it makes you really think about. Like I kind of struggle with part 2 and part 4 because I really do like part 2, but I'm like, but my heart is like, part 4 just has a thing to me. So I love going through the exercise of it's funny because I hadn't really thought a lot about it until I sat down earlier today, as a matter of fact, and went, you know what? I'm just going to figure it out. And I literally was just like, and it kind of wrote itself. I was like, oh, that was actually a lot easier than I thought it was going to be.
Oh, there you go.
When I started really, I looked at the list the second, third time, and I was sort of like, no, that feels right. So.
Yeah, it's funny. I was reorganizing my list on Letterboxd, and last time I had done this a few years ago, I had H2O at like 4 or 5. So not quite as low as you, but it's definitely still more towards the middle of the pack. But after these last couple of viewers, I was like, I just love this movie. It's it. I'm in and out, and I love it. I have a good time the whole time from beginning to end. So Yeah. So, all right, Ben, we're going to wrap this one up. Why don't you tell everyone where they can find you, where they can find the FrightRags, all the good stuff.
Great. Well, you can go to www.fright-rags.com. That's our website. And you can follow us on social media. It's at FrightRags, all one word, on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We're all over those. So and even a little bit on TikTok, not too much. But yeah, so just follow us there and get on our newsletter so you can be up to date on all the new releases we've got coming out.
Before we end, I did want to ask this. I forgot about it. How much do you regret that dash in fright-rags.com?
It's so funny you say that, and you're 100% right. I went back and tried to get the main domain at one point, and someone was squatting on it. And at this point, it's just, I think what happens now at this point is most people just type in FrightRags on Google. You know what I mean?
Yep.
We're not even actually typing in. I mean, it's weird sidebar. FrightRags is actually searched more on Google than horror shirts is. It's really kind of funny.
So there you go.
So yeah, I think people now just search for the brand, but you're right, the dash. What, you know, had I known 18 years ago that would be an issue, or, you know, I would have just bought both, but I was trying to be cheap, and I'm like, well, if I separate the words, it looks better. Well, whatever.
Yeah, there's the amount of times I've typed in www.frightrags.com, but luckily it'll bring you to Google and be like, you probably meant this, and it's like, yeah, oh yeah, there it is. Exactly. Yeah. So that's the good thing. I just had to ask that. I was curious about that.
Yeah.
All right, and as always, you can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at ynfmoviepod. Let's see, this will be out, I think, next week. I think I have an episode on Scream coming next week. That should be what I have. And then after that, Rosemary's Baby. And then I'll be joined by a couple friends, and we're actually going to do something different on the show. And we're going to do a deep dive on the original Halloween.
Nice.
And we're going to start with the beginning, go to the end. We're going to talk about the television version. We're going to talk about the novelization. So we'll have all kinds of fun stuff to talk about in that episode. So be sure to check back. Till next time, you guys take care.